Hello everyone, welcome to Let's Crack UPSC CSE English. In our marathon series for the class 11th NCERT part 8, today we'll continue with the remaining part of Indian Constitution at work. It's my pleasure to welcome you all on Unacademy, India's largest learning platform, where you will get unlimited access for live and recorded classes, structured courses and much more. It's me, Rushikesh Inamdar, guiding UPSC aspirants from last 8 years. You can follow me on Unacademy using this link. Friends, we are conducting Unacademy Civil Services Championship tomorrow at 10 a.m. So save your date for tomorrow morning 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. The Civil Services Championship by Unacademy. It's a free event for all aspirants. Friends, here is the chance to win scholarship and prizes. So top 50 rankers will eligible to get up to 100% scholarship. Study material, that is notes by top educators and guidance by top CSE mentors, which includes serving and ex-bureaucrats and top educators. Along with that, here is the chance to win amazing prizes like MacBook, iPad, iPhone and AirPods. So hurry up, enroll yourself for Unacademy Civil Services Championship, which is scheduled on 13 June. Yes, we have another program for UPSC CSE, that is Iconic subscription. Those aspirants will opt for minimum 2 years of Iconic subscription. They will eligible for the one-on-one personal mentoring, and this program is for first 100 aspirants. So friends, hurry up, enroll for the program and let's crack it. We are also providing number of benefits on subscription here from 10th June to 16th June. The Great Learning Week, where Maha subscription offer, combo subscription discount, optional carnival and study material in hard copy. So friends, in Maha subscription offer, you will get extended validity till mains examination. For example, 1 year of subscription, you will get extended validity till 2022 main examination, and for 2 years of subscription, you will get extended validity till mains examination 2023. Here is also huge discount on combo subscription. So you can use referral code RBI Live to enroll for these subscriptions. We are also providing no cost EMI benefit, which means those aspirants facing financial constraint, they can opt for no cost EMI or loan facilities. They can use this link. And Unacademy is now providing study material, that is 20 books, Hindi and English medium, in hard copy with minimum 1 year of subscription. Here is a optional carnival which is scheduled on 16th June. So you can now start up your or boost up your optional preparation with us. We are also providing Iconic and Plus paid subscriptions. Now those aspirants pursuing their graduation or after their 12th examination planning to start their preparation for civil services, they can go with our Iconic subscription. In Iconic subscription, you will get all the features of Plus courses or Plus subscription like live classes, structured courses, unlimited access for live and recorded classes and weekly tests. Along with that, additional features like personal guidance, study planner, study material, expert guidelines and test analysis. So additional features with Iconic subscription. And friends, you can use referral code RBI Live to get 10% discount on our Plus or Iconic subscription, where for 2 years of Plus subscription, you have to pay only 64,800 rupees, and for Iconic subscription, 2 year subscription, after discount, you have to pay only 1,04,175 rupees. So hurry up, enroll yourself for the paid subscriptions. We are going to start new batches from 16th June. Free test series for all aspirants and Unacademy Combat on every Sunday. So let's start with our today's topic. Here we go with our Indian Constitution Act work. So friends, almost we have covered maximum topics. Now in today's part, we'll finish remaining topics of the class 11th NCRT. So we have covered Constitution, why and how, rights in the Indian Constitution, election and representation, executive, legislature, judiciary, federalism, local governments, Constitution as a living document, and now we are studying the philosophy of the Constitution. So we'll start with this topic, and after that we'll recap what we have covered in this NCRT. So friends, we'll start with the philosophy of the Indian Constitution. Yes. So before that, we'll recap what about the last session we have covered, that is Constitution as living document. So friends, we have covered the introductory part of that topic, where the static nature of constitutions, we have studied about the France constitution and the scenario. Then we have learned about Article 368 of our constitution, where Parliament may, in exercise of its constituent power, amend by way of addition, variation, or repeal any provision of this constitution in accordance with the procedure laid down in this article. We have covered how to amend the constitution, similar to ordinary law, special majority in parliament in both houses separately as per Article 368, and special majority plus legislatures of half the states, Article 368. Then Article 2, we have studied about the Parliament may by law admit into the Union new states, and Article 3, which talks about the Parliament may by law increase the area of any state. So Article 2 is talked about the Parliament's power to admit new states in Indian territory by acquisition or by the creation of new states, whereas Article 3 is talks about the Parliament empowered to increase the area of any state accordance with the law. Yes, then we have covered spatial majority, we have studied about the one of the note by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. If he stated that if those who are dissatisfied with the constitution have only to obtain a two-third majority, and if they cannot obtain even that, their dissatisfaction with the constitution cannot be deemed to be shared by the general public. The note that Dr. Ambedkar is talking here not only of parliamentary majority, he refers to sharing by the general public. Yes, of the views by the general public. And this indicates that behind the majority, there is principle of public opinion that governs decision making. Yes, that governs decision making. So this reference from the Constituent Assembly debate. Then we have studied about ratification by states. Then we have learned about the amendments from its constituent or the adoption of our constitution. After that, the amendments into our constitution like year wise and decade wise. Then the contents of amendments made so far we have covered, like differing interpretations, amendments through political consensus, controversial amendments, then basic structure and evolution of the constitution we have discussed in the last session. Then review and constitution as a living document. So before that, friends, we have covered one event, that is or incident, review of the constitution. So in the late 90s, the efforts were made to review the entire constitution. So what happened in the year 2000? A commission to review the working of the constitution was appointed by the government of India under the chairmanship of a retired Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Venkatchalaya. So opposition parties and many other organizations which boycotted the commission, and while a lot of political controversy surrounded this commission. So the commission stuck to the theory of basic structure and did not suggest any measures that would endanger the basic structure of the constitution. So this shows the significance of the basic structure doctrine in our constitutional practice. Then we have covered the constitution as a living document. Then the contribution of the judiciary. Then the maturity of the political leadership. Yes, so we have concluded that last session. So there still be debates about what constitutes basic structure, and there is nothing wrong in such debates. So we must remember that politics in a democratic or democracy is necessarily full of debates and differences. That is a sign of diversity, liveliness, and openness. So democracy welcomes debates, and at the same time, our political parties and leadership have shown maturity in setting limits to these debates. So, because politics is also about compromises and give and take. So, extreme positions may be theoretically very correct and ideologically very attractive. But politics demands that everyone is prepared to moderate their extreme views, sharp positions, and reach a common minimum ground. Yes, here we have learned about the maturity of political leadership from independence till the date, and only then democratic politics become possible when we can say that visionary leadership is always required for the growth and overall development of the nation. So politicians and the people of India have understand and practice these skills that has made the experience of working of the democratic constitution quite successful. So among the different organs of the government, there will always be competition over which one is more important than the others. They will also always fight over what constitutes the welfare of the people. And but in the last instance, the final authority lies with the people, and their people and their freedom and their well-being constitute the purpose of democracy and also the outcome of democratic politics. So friends, now we'll start with the next topic, the philosophy of the Constitution. Yes, last chapter of the NCERT class 11. Now we'll start with the introductory part. So, in this NCERT book, so far we have studied some important provisions of our Constitution and the way in which these have worked in the last 69 years. We also studied the way in which the Constitution was made. But now we have to ask the question like, but have you ever asked yourself why leaders of the national movement felt the need to adopt a constitution after achieving independence from British rule? Why did they choose to bind themselves and the future generations to a constitution? So in this book, we have repeatedly visited the debates in the Constituent Assemblies. Yes, Constituent Assembly. But it should be asked why the study of the Constitution must be accompanied by a deep examination of the debates in the Constituent Assembly. So now we'll address this question, or this question will be addressed in this chapter. Yes, and secondly, it is important to ask what kind of constitution we have given ourselves, what objectives we hope to achieve by it. Do these objectives have a moral content? If so, what precisely is it? What are the strengths and limitations of this vision? And by implication, the achievements and weaknesses of the Constitution. So in doing so, we try to understand what can be called the philosophy of the Constitution. So after reading this chapter, you should be able to understand why it is important to study the philosophy of the Constitution, what are the core features of the Indian Constitution, what are the criticism of this Constitution, and what are the limitations of the Constitution. So friends, here we go. What is meant by philosophy of the Constitution? Yes friends, I hope everyone aware about the term philosophy. Yes. So friends, philosophy is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality and existence, especially when considered as an academic discipline. Yes, so philosophy is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality and existence. Now, some people believe that a constitution merely consists of laws and that laws are one thing, values and morality. Yes, therefore, we can have only a legalistic, not a political philosophy approach to the Constitution. So, it is true that all laws do not have a moral content, but many laws are closely connected to our deeply held values. So, friends, when we are talking about or we have studied debates like various statements and the observations by our constitution makers in our constitution or the assembly, constituent assembly debates, they described a various live examples of the society, because the members belonging to the Constituent Assembly, they belongs to the various sectors and sections of our society throughout the country, and they are putting very realistic examples during the debate. Yes, so it is true that all laws do not have moral content, but many laws are closely connected to our deeply held values. So for example, a law, yes, a law might prohibit discrimination of persons on grounds of language or religion. So such a law is connected to the idea of equality, and such a law exists because we value equality. Yes, so there is a connection between laws and moral values. Yes, here is a query by a student about class timings. So due to technical error, we are extending our class. So as per your convenience, you can watch the recordings later on as well. Yes, friends. Now, we must therefore look upon the Constitution as a document that is based on certain moral vision. We need to adopt a political philosophy approach to the Constitution. And what do we mean by a political philosophy approach to the Constitution? So we have three things in mind. First, we need to understand the conceptual structure of the Constitution. Then second, yes, first we need to understand the conceptual structure of the Constitution. So what does this mean? It means that we must ask questions like, what are the possible meanings of terms used in the Constitution such as rights, citizenship, minority, or democracy? Furthermore, we must attempt to work out a coherent vision of society and polity conditional upon an interpretation of the key concept of the Constitution. So we must have a better grasp of the set of ideals embedded in the Constitution. And our final point is that Indian Constitution must be read in conjunction with the Constituent Assembly debates in order to refine and raise to a higher theoretical plane the justification of values embedded in the Constitution. Yes. So, a philosophical treatment of values is incomplete if a detailed justification for it is not provided. So, when the framers of the Constitution choose to guide Indian society and polity by a set of values, there must have been a corresponding set of reasons, and many of them they may not have been fully explained. Yes. So, a political philosophy approach to the Constitution is needed not only to find out the moral content expressed in it and to evaluate its claims, but possibly to use it to arbitrate between varying interpretations of many core values in our polity. It is obvious that many of its ideals are challenged, discussed, debated, and contested in different political arenas So in the legislatures, in party forums, in the press, in the schools and universities, these ideals are variously interpreted and sometimes willfully manipulated to suit partisan short-term interests. Yes. So, when we are talking about a political philosophy, which approach to the constitution is needed not only to find out the moral content expressed in it and to evaluate its claims, but possibly to use it arbitrate between varying interpretations of the many core values in our polity. So, we must therefore examine whether or not a serious disjunction exists between the constitutional ideal and its expression in other arenas. So, sometimes the same ideal is interpreted differently by different institutions. So, we need to compare these differing interpretations since the expression of the ideal in the constitution has considerable authority. It must be used to arbitrate in conflict of interpretation over values or ideals. So our constitution can perform this job of arbitration. Yes, our constitution can perform this job of arbitration. So constitution as means of democratic transformation. So in the first chapter we have studied the meaning of the term constitution and the need to have a constitution. So friends, it is widely agreed that one reason for having constitutions is the need to restrict the exercise of power. Modern states are excessively powerful. They are believed to have a monopoly over force and coercion. So, what if institutions of such states fall into wrong hands who abuse this power? Yes, here is the question of understanding the philosophy when we are talking about need of constitution. Yes, so the need to restrict the exercise of power, and modern states are excessively powerful. So what if institutions of such states fall into wrong hands who abuse this power? Even if these institutions were created for our safety and well-being, they can easily turn against us. Yes, as we have learned in so many countries, like the dictatorship, or we can say the power fall into wrong hands, and we have learned about the consequences globally. So experience of state power the world over shows that most states are prone to harming the interest of at least some individuals and groups. And if so, we need to draw the rules of the game in such a way that this tendency of states is continuously checked. And the constitutions provide these basic rules and therefore prevent states from turning tyrannical. Yes, constitution also provide peaceful democratic means to bring about social transformation. Yes, when we are talking about the social justice, various policies and schemes implemented by central and state government which provide peaceful democratic means to bring about social transformation, and all these things mentioned in the constitution. So moreover, for hydro-colonized people, constitutions announced and embody the first real exercise of political self-determination. So, in the past, Nehru understood both these points well. So, the demand for a constituent assembly, he claimed, represented a collective demand for full self-determination because only a constituent assembly of elected representatives of the Indian people had the right to frame India's constitution without external interferences. And second, he argued the Constituent Assembly is not just a body of people or a gathering of able lawyers, rather, it is a nation on the move which, throwing away the shell of its past political and possibly social structure and fashioning for itself a new garment of its own making. So, the Indian Constitution was designed to break the shackles of traditional social hierarchies and to usher in a new era of freedom, equality, and justice. Now, so basically, this approach had the potential of changing the theory of constitutional democracy altogether. So, according to this approach, constitutions exist not only to limit people in power but to empower those who traditionally have been deprived of it. So, constitution can give vulnerable people the power to achieve collective good. Yes. So, constitution means of democratic transformation. Then, next question is that why do we need to go back to the Constituent Assembly? Now, why look backwards and bind ourselves to the past is the question. But that may be the job of a legal historian to go into the past, search for the basic of legal and political ideas. But why should students of politics be interested in studying the intentions and concerns of those who framed the Constitution? And why not take account of changed circumstances and define anew the normative function of the Constitution? Yes. Now, question is that, friends, normally when we are talking in general, we are always keeping our eye on future. Now, question is that why look backwards and bind ourselves to the past? And why do we need to go back to the Constituent Assembly? Now, in the global context, if we are talking about America, in the context of America, where the Constitution was written in the late 18th century, and it is absolute to apply the values and standards of that era to the 21st century. However, in India, the world of the original framers and our present day world may not have changed so drastically in terms of our values, ideals, and conception. We have not separated ourselves from the world of the Constituent Assembly. So, a history of our Constitution is still very much a history of the present. Yes, friends, now remember this. A history of our Constitution is still very much a history of the present. So, furthermore, we may have forgotten the real point underlying several of our legal and political practices, simply because somewhere down the road we began to take them for granted. And these reasons have now slipped into the background, screened off from our consciousness, even though, even though they still provide the organizational principle to current practices. So here, we should understand how our constitution evaluation linked from our past experiences. Yes, when the going is good, this forgetting is harmless. But when these practices are challenged or threatened, neglect of the underlying principles can be harmful. In short, to get a handle on current constitutional practice, to grasp their value and meaning, we may have no option but to go back in time to the colonial era. Therefore, we need to remember and keep revisiting the political philosophy underlying our constitution. Yes. So a history of our constitution is still very much a history of the present. And therefore we need to remember and keep revisiting the political philosophy which underlying our constitution. Now next question is that what is the political philosophy of our constitution? Yes, friends. So it is hard to describe this philosophy in one word. It resists any single label because it resists any single label because it is liberal, democratic, egalitarian, secular and federal, open to community values, sensitive to the needs of religious and linguistic minorities, as well as historically disadvantaged groups, and committed to building a common national identity. So in short, it is committed to freedom, equality, social justice, and some form of national unity. But underneath all this, there is a clear emphasis on peaceful and democratic measures for putting this philosophy into practice. Yes, so it is hard to describe the political philosophy of our constitution. Now see, the cartoon is talking about, well, all ideas unfold on this playfield. Democracy is the umpire. Now see, which is talkative cartoon, which showing the role of democracy as the role of umpire in sport field. Yes. Now, our constitution which empowers or strengthen the individual freedom. Now friends, the first point to note about the constitution is its commitment to individual freedom. So this commitment did not emerge miraculously out of calm deliberations around a table. Rather, it was the product of continuous intellectual and political activity of well over a century. As early as the beginning of the 19th century, then Ram Mohan Roy, who protested against the curtailment of the freedom of the press by the British colonial state. So, Ram Mohan Roy argued that a state responsive to the needs of individuals must provide them the means by which their needs are communicated. So therefore, the state must permit unlimited liberty of publication. Likewise, Indians continued to demand a free press throughout the British rule. So friends, we have to understand how our constitution is providing individual freedom. Yes, so the constitution is its commitment to individual freedom. When we are talking about the British era, there in those period as well, Ram Mohan Roy, who protested against the curtailment of the freedom of the press by the Britishers. Now, next, it is not surprising therefore that freedom of expression is an integral part of the Indian Constitution. So is the freedom from arbitrary arrest. After all, the infamous Rowlatt Act, which the national movement opposed to, vehemently sought to deny this basic freedom, and these and other individual freedoms such as freedom of conscience are part of the liberal ideology. On this basis, we can say that the Indian Constitution has a pretty strong liberal character. So in the chapter on fundamental rights, we have already seen how the Constitution values individual freedom, and it might be recalled that for over 40 years before the adoption of the Constitution. Yes, if we are talking about our society, during the British era, the people were talking about their rights and freedom. So, when we are talking about the constitutional rights or the various rights mentioned in the Constitution or the provisions, every single resolution, scheme, bill and report of the Indian National Congress mentioned about individual rights, not just in passing but as non-negotiable value. Yes, so our constitution is providing individual freedom. Then social justice. After individual freedom, we have to study social justice. So when we say that the Indian Constitution is liberal, we do not mean that it is liberal only to the classical Western sense. In the book on political theory, we will learn more about the idea of liberalism. So classical liberalism always privileges rights of the individuals over demands of social justice and community values. So the liberalism of the Indian Constitution differs from this version in two ways. First, it was always linked to the social justice, and the best example of this is the provision for reservations for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in the Constitution. So the makers of the Constitution believe that the mere granting of the right to equality was not enough to overcome age-old injustice suffered by these groups or to give real meaning to their right to vote. So, the liberalism of the Indian Constitution, which differs from the version in two ways. So it was always linked to the social justice. And the best example of this is provision for reservations for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in the constitution. So special constitutional measures were required to advance their interests, and therefore the constitution makers provided a number of special measures to protect the interest of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, such as the reservation of seats in legislatures. The constitution also made it possible for the government to reserve public sector jobs for these groups. So friends, when we are talking about social justice in our country, our constitution makes sure that all sectors of society or all sections of the society participated in decision making and our democracy. So there is provision of reservations for the SCs and STs. And constitution makes sure that the right to vote is also equal for all sections. Yes, there are special constitutional measures also. Yes, which provides, or the special constitutional measures were required to advance their interests. Then, Indian liberalism has two streams. The first stream began with Ram Mohan Roy. He emphasized individual rights, particularly the rights of women, and the second stream included thinkers like K.C. Sen, Justice Ranade, and Swami Vivekananda. They introduced the spirit of social justice within Orthodox Hinduism. For Vivekananda, such reordering of Hindu society could not have been possible without liberal principles. So these are the statements by, or this thought by the, yes, these thoughts mentioned in the K.M. Pannikar in Defense of Liberalism book. Yes, reference is the K.M. Pannikar and In Defense of Liberalism. Now, after that, after social justice, respect for diversity and minority rights. Our constitution makes sure that in our society, there should be a respect for diversity and minority rights. So the Indian constitution encourages equal respect between communities. This was not easy in our country. First, because communities do not always have a relationship of equality. They tend to have hierarchical relationships with one another, as in the case of caste. And second, when these communities do see each other as equals, they also tend to become rivals. Yes, as in the case of religious communities. So, friends, this was a huge challenge for the makers of the Constitution. How to make communities liberal in their approach and foster a sense of equal respect among them under existing conditions of hierarchy or intense rivalry. When we are understanding the society, so friends, in our Indian society, there are differences on various levels, we can say. If we'll take example of any village in our country, there are different communities, religions, or we can say sub sections of the society which based on caste. So during or after the independence or during the procedure of constructing our constitution, a huge challenge for the constitution makers to spread awareness in our Indian society about equality. How convince the people to live with the equality with all castes and religions. So they decided various measures for that. Like it would have been very easy to resolve this problem by not recognizing communities at all, or as most Western liberal constitutions do. But this would have been unworkable and undesirable in our country. So, friends, in Western countries, a number of constitutions they resolve this problem by not recognizing communities at all. But in case of our country, this would have been unworkable and undesirable and non-practical. So this is not because Indians are attached to communities more than others, and individuals everywhere also belonging to cultural communities, and every such community has its own values, traditions, customs and language shared by its members. So for example, individual in France or Germany belonging to a linguistic community and are deeply attached to it. So what makes us different? In that we have more openly acknowledged the value of communities. More importantly, India is a land of multiple cultural communities. Unlike Germany or France, we have several linguistic and religious communities. It was important to ensure that no one community systematically dominates others, and this made it mandatory for our constitution to recognize community based rights. Yes. So, one such right is the right of religious communities to establish and run their own educational institutions, and such institutions may receive money from the government. So, this provision shows that the Indian Constitution does not see religion merely as a private matter concerning the individual. So, this is the difference between other constitutions in the world and our Indian Constitution, where our Constitution is talking about equal opportunity to all regards, and there is no any discrimination on the basis of caste, religion, sex, or financial situations or the financial status. So our constitution makes sure that respect for diversity and minority rights. Now after that we'll see secularism. So friends, secular states are widely seen as treating religion as only a private matter. So that is to say, they refuse to give religion public or official recognition. So does this mean that the Indian constitution is not secular? this does not follow. Though the term secular was not initially mentioned, the Indian Constitution has always been secular. Yes, the mainstream Western conception of secularism means mutual exclusion of state and religion in order to protect values such as individual freedom and citizenship rights of individuals. Yes. So, when we are talking about the individual freedom and citizenship rights of individuals, so all the protection of, or there are the rights given by our constitution which make sure the rights of individuals along with the freedom. So again, this is something that we learn about more in political theory. The term mutual exclusion means this both religion and state must stay away from the internal affairs of one another. And the state must not intervene in the domain of religion. So, religion likewise should not dictate state policy or influence the conduct of the state. And in other words, mutual exclusion means that religion and state must be strictly separated. Now, what is the purpose behind strict separation? It is to safeguard the freedom of individuals. States which lend support to organized religions make them more powerful than they already are. Yes. So when religious organizations begin to control the religious lives of individuals, and when they start dictating how they should relate to God or how they should pray, individuals may have the option to turn into the modern state of protecting their religious freedom. But what help would a state offer them if it is already joined hands with these organizations? Yes. The way in our constitution deals with the religious matters or to protect religious freedom of individuals. Therefore, state must not help religious organizations, but at the same time, state should not tell religious organizations how to manage their affairs. Yes, that too can devote religious freedom. So the state must therefore not hinder religious organizations either. And in short, state should neither help nor hinder religions, and instead they should keep themselves at an arm's length from them. So friends, here is the idea of promoting all religions, not to curtail any individual or specific religious rights or individual rights. Yes. So conditions in India were different, and yes, now the situation, like we have discussed all those scenarios, this has been the prevalent Western conception of secularism Now, conditions in India were different, and to respond to the challenge they posed, the makers of the constitution had to work out an alternative conception of secularism. They departed from the Western model in two ways and for two different reasons, like rights of religious groups and state's power of intervention. Yes. So first is rights of religious groups. So first, as mentioned already, they recognize that inter-community equality was a necessary as equality between individuals. And this was because a person's freedom and sense of self-respect was directly dependent upon the status of her community. So if one community was dominated by another, then its members would also significantly less free. If on the other hand, their relations were equal, marked by an absence of domination, then its members would also walk about with dignity, self-respect and freedom. Thus, the Indian Constitution grants rights to all religious communities, such as the rights to establish and maintain their educational institutions. Freedom of religion in India means the freedom of religion of both individuals and communities. Then second is that state's power of intervention. Second, separation in India could not mean mutual exclusion. Why is it so? Because religiously sanctioned customs such as untouchability deprived individuals of the most basic dignity and self-respect. So such customs were so deeply rooted and pervasive that without active state intervention, there was no hope of their dissolution. So the state simply had to interfere in the affairs of religion, and such interventions were not always negative. Now understand the difference between Western thoughts about constitution and their implementation and in our Indian constitution. So the state simply had to interfere in the affairs of religion, and such intervention was not always negative. The state could also help religious communities by giving aid to educational institutions run by them, and thus the state may help or hinder religious communities depending on which mode of action promotes values such as freedom and equality. So in India, separation between religion and state did not mean their mutual exclusion, but rather principled distance, a rather complex idea that allows the state to be distant from all religions so that it can intervene or abstain from interference depending upon which of these two would better promote liberty, equality and social justice. So we have It is to mention three core features, and these also be seen as the achievements of our constitution. So friends, what talks about are the philosophical ideas like individual freedom, social justice, respect for diversity and minority rights, secularism, rights of religious groups, and state's power of intervention. Yes. So our constitution which so friends, the Indian constitution which ensures all these basic rights. Now, first our constitution which reinforces and reinvents forms of liberal individualism. Yes, this is an important achievement because this is done in the backdrop of a society where community values are often indifferent or hostile to individual autonomy. Yes, then second, our constitution upholds the principle of social justice without compromising on individual liberties. So the constitutional commitment to caste-based affirmative action, the program shows, yes, the constitutional commitment to caste-based affirmative action program shows how much ahead India was compared to other nations. So can one forget the affirmative action programs in the United States were begun after 1964, that is Civil Rights Act, almost 2 decades after they were constitutionally entrenched in India. And third, against the background of intercommunal strife, the Constitution upholds the commitment to group rights. This indicates that the framers of the Constitution were more than willing to face the challenges of what more than 4 decades later has come to be known as multiculturalism. So, they talked about the rights of religious group and state's power of intervention. Now, after that, universal franchise. Yes, next character or the feature of our constitution, universal franchise. So, two other core features may also be regarded as achievements. First, it is no mean achievement to commit oneself to universal franchise, and especially when there is widespread belief that traditional hierarchies in India are congregated and more or less impossible to eliminate. And when the right to vote has only recently been extended to women and to the working class in stable Western democracies. So, on the idea of nation took root among the elite and the idea of democratic self-government followed. Thus, Indian nationalism always conceived of a political order based on the will of every single member of society. and the idea of universal franchise, which lay securely within the heart of nationalism. So, as early as Constitution of India Bill 1895, the first non-official attempt at drafting a constitution for India, the author declared that every citizen, that is, anyone born in, once the idea of a nation took root among the elite and the idea of democratic self-government followed. Thus, Indian nationalism always conceived a political order based will of every single member of society, and the idea of universal franchise lay securely within the heart of nationalism. Yes. So, anyone born in India had a right to take part in the affairs of the country and be admitted to public office. The Motilal Nehru Report 1928, which reaffirms this conception of citizenship, reiterating that every person of either sex who has attained the age of 21, either male or female, or any other gender, is entitled to vote for the House of Representatives or Parliament. Thus, from very early on, universal franchise was considered as the most important and legitimate instrument by which the will of the nation was to be properly expressed. So friends, when we are talking about universal franchise, the concept was immersed and also discussed during the Constitution debate. Yes, Constituent Assembly debates. So this is the most important feature of our Constitution. So there is one comment mentioned by the Aladdi Krishnaswamy Iyer in Constituent Assembly debate. The Assembly has adopted the principle of adult franchise with an abundant faith in the common man and the ultimate success of democratic rule, and in the full belief that the introduction of democratic government on the basis of adult suffrage, which will promote the well-being. After that, next feature, federalism. Second, the introducing the article concerning Northeast, that is Article 371. The Indian Constitution anticipates the very important concept of asymmetric federalism. We have seen in the chapter on federalism that the Indian Constitution has created a strong central government, but despite this unitary bias of the Indian Constitution, there are important constitutionally embedded differences between the legal status and prerogative of different subunits within the same federation. So unlike the constitutional symmetry of American federalism, Indian federalism has been constitutionally asymmetric to meet the specific needs and requirements of some subunits. It was always part of the original design to have a unique relationship with them or to give them spatial status. Yes. So under Article 371A, the privilege of spatial status was also accorded to the northeastern state of Nagaland, and this article not only confers validity on pre-existing laws within Nagaland but also protects local identity through restrictions on immigration, and many other states too are beneficiaries of such spatial provisions. So when we are talking about the diversity in our country, we have that unity in our culture which shows such spatial provisions. So according to the Indian Constitution, then there is nothing bad about this differential treatment. So spatial status for some states. And although the Constitution did not originally envisage this, so India is now a multilingual federation, and each major linguistic group is politically recognized and all are treated as equals. When we are talking about the democracy, excuse me, yes, when we are talking about democracy in our country, it's multifaceted or various angles of it. Now, so India is now a multilingual federation, and each major linguistic group is politically recognized and all are treated as equals. So, the democratic and linguistic federalism of India has managed to combine claims to unity with claims to cultural recognition. So, a fairly robust political arena exists that allows for the play of multiple identities that complement one another. So, federalism is also a unique feature, which means a united feature of our constitution. Then, national identity. Thus, the constitution constantly reinforces a common national identity. In the chapter on federalism, we have studied how India strives to retain regional identities along with the national identity. So it is clear from what is mentioned about that this common national identity was not incompatible with distinct religious or linguistic identities, and the Indian Constitution tried to balance these various identities. So, yet preference was given to common identity under certain conditions, and this is clarified in the debate over separate electorates based on religious identity, which the Constitution rejects. So, the separate electorates based on religious identity, which the Constitution rejects this demand. So separate electorates were rejected not because they fostered difference between religious communities as such, or because they endangered a simple notion of national unity, and but because they endangered a healthy national life. So rather than forced unity, our constitution sought to evolve true fraternity, a goal dear to the heart of Dr. Ambedkar And as Sardar Patel put it, the main objective was to evolve one community. So national identity. So a constitution constantly reinforces a common national identity. So in Constituent Assembly, few leaders was demanding a separate electorates on religion basis, but the demand was denied. So collectively we are talking about national identity and the true fraternity in our society. Yes, so our constitution sought to evolve true fraternity. Yes. Now, there is one statement by Sardar Patel in Constituent Assembly debate. But in the long run, he said that, but in the long run, it would be in the interest of all to forget that there is anything like majority or minority in this country, and that in India there is only one community. So he emphasized on one community, that is national identity, that is Indian spirit, in his all acts. Then procedural achievements. So all these five core features are what might be called the substantive achievements of the Constitution. And however, there was also some procedural achievements. First, the Indian Constitution reflects a faith in political deliberation. We know that many groups and interests were not adequately represented in the Constituent Assembly, but the debates in the Assembly amply show that the makers of the Constitution wanted to be as inclusive in their approach as possible. So, this open-ended approach indicates the willingness of people to modify their existing preferences. In short, to justify outcomes by reference and not to self-interest but to reasons. It also shows a willingness to recognize creative value in difference and disagreement. Second, it reflects a spirit of compromise and accommodation. So these words compromise and accommodation should not always be seen with disapproval. So not all compromises are bad. If something of value is traded off for mere self-interest, then we naturally have compromised in the bad sense. And however, if one value is partially traded off for another value, especially in an open process of free deliberation among equals, then the compromise arrived in this manner can hardly be objected to. So we may lament that we could not have everything, but to secure a bit of all things important cannot be morally blameworthy. And beside a commitment to the idea that decisions on the most important issues must be arrived at consensually rather than by majority vote is equally morally commendable. So when we are talking about procedural achievements, mentioned all the five core features are what might be called substantive achievements of the Constitution. So these five core features Yes, individual freedom, social justice, respect for diversity and minority rights, secularism, universal franchise, federalism, national identity. Yes, so these are the core features or the features of the Constitution. Then there are also criticisms, as we know, for any work or any action, there is a reaction. So like that, there is also part of criticism. So Indian Constitution can be subjected to many criticisms, of which three may be briefly mentioned. First, that is unwieldy. Second, that is unrepresentative. And third, that is aligned to our conditions. So the criticism that is unwieldy is based on the assumptions that the entire constitution of a country must be found in one compact document. But this is not true even of countries such as the United States, which do have a compact constitution. So the fact is that a country's constitution is to be identified with a compact document and with other written documents with constitutional status. So thus, it is possible to find important constitutional statements and practices outside one compact document. So in the case of India, many such details, practices and statements are included in one single document, and this has made that document somewhat large in size. So many countries, for instance, do not have provisions for election commission or the civil service commission in the document known as constitution, but in India many such matters are attended by the constitutional document itself. Then a second criticism of constitution is that it is unrepresentative. So do you remember how the Constituent Assembly was formed? So at that time, adult franchise was not yet granted, and most members came from the advanced sections of the society. And does this make our constitution unrepresentative? So here we must distinguish two components of representation. One that might be called voice and the other opinion. So the voice component of representation is important. So people must be recognized in their own language or voice, not in the language of the masters. And if we look at the Indian constitution from this dimension, it is indeed unrepresentative because members of the Constituent Assembly were chosen by a restricted franchise, not by universal suffrage. So, however, if we examine the other dimension, we may not find altogether lacking in representativeness the claim that almost every shade of opinion was represented in the Constituent Assembly may be trifle ex aggregated but may have something to it. If we read the debates that took place in the Constituent Assembly, we find that a vast range of issues and opinions were mentioned. Members raised matters not only based on their individual social concerns, but based on the perceived interest and concerns of various social sections as well. So it is coincidence that the central square of every other small town has a statue of Dr. Ambedkar with a copy of the Indian Constitution. And yes, so is it a coincidence that the central square of every other small town has a statue of Dr. Ambedkar with a copy of the Indian Constitution? Or, far from being a mere symbolic tribute to him, so this expresses the feeling among Dalits that the Constitution reflects many of their aspirations. So, final criticism alleges that the Indian Constitution is entirely an alien document which borrowed article by article from Western constitutions and sits uneasily with the cultural ethos of the Indian people. The criticism is often voiced by many. Even in the Constituent Assembly itself, there were some voices that echo this concern. So, how far this is charged true? So, it is true that the Indian Constitution is modern and partly Western. Do you remember that? In the first chapter, we have listed the various sources from which our Constitution borrowed. But in this chapter, we have also seen that it was never a blind borrowing. It was innovative borrowing besides as we shall see, this does not make it entirely alien. Yes. So friends, when we are studying the Indian Constitution and there is a criticism regarding the alien document, it's not true because as we have studied that the all sources and there are number of discussions among the all articles and the practicability in our society was made sure by our constitution makers. Then there is one statement by K. Hanumanthia at the Constituent Assembly debate. We wanted the music of Veena or Sitar, but here we have the music of an English band. That was because our constitution makers were educated that way. So that is exactly the kind of constitution Mahatma Gandhi did not want and did not envisage. So this is the criticism by the K. Hanumanthia in the Constituent Assembly debate. But we have to accept the other aspects of our constitution as well. So first, many Indians have not only adopted modern ways of thinking, but have made these their own. So for them, Westernization became a form of protest against the filth in their own tradition. So Ram Mohan Roy started this trend and it is continued to this day by Dalits. So indeed as early as 1841, it was noticed that the Dalit people of northern India were not afraid to use the newly introduced legal system and bring suits against their landlords. So this new instrument of modern law was effectively adopted by the people to address questions of dignity and justice. And second, when Western modernity began to interact with local cultural systems, something like a hybrid culture began to emerge, and possibly by creative adoption, for which a parallel can be found neither in Western modernity nor in indigenous tradition. So this cluster of newly developed phenomena which forged out of Western modern and indigenous traditional cultural systems have the character of a different alternative modernity. So in non-Western societies, different modernities emerged as non-Western societies tried to break loose not only from their own past practices but also from the shackles of a particular version of Western modernity imposed on them. Thus, when we were drafting our constitution, efforts were made to amalgamate Western and traditional Indian values. So, it was a process of selective adaptation and not borrowing. Yes. So, it was a process of selective adoption and not borrowing. Now, after that, there are few limitations we have to discuss. So, all this is not to say that the Constitution of India is a perfect and flawless document. So, given the social conditions within which the Constitution was made, it was only natural that there may be many controversial matters, that there would be many areas that needed careful revision. There are many features of this Constitution that have emerged mainly due to the exigencies of the time. Nonetheless, we must admit that there are many limitations to this Constitution. So let us briefly mention the limitations of the Constitution. So as we know, a Constitution is not a perfect or flawless document, but so the given social conditions within which the Constitution was made, and it was only natural that there may be many controversial matters and that there would be many areas that needed careful revision. Now, in the sense limitations, first, the Indian Constitution has a centralized idea of national unity. Second, it appears to have glossed over some important issues of gender justice, particularly within the family. Yes. Third, it is not clear why in a poor developing country certain basic socio-economic rights were relegated to the section on directive principles rather than made an integral feature of our fundamental rights. So it is possible to give answers to these limitations, to explain why this happened or even to overcome them. But that is not our point. We are arguing that these limitations are not serious enough to jeopardize the philosophy of the Constitution. Yes. So here is the conclusion part. In the previous chapter, we described the Constitution as a living document, and yes, so it is these core features of the Constitution that give it is stature of a living document, legal provisions and institutional arrangements depend upon the needs of the society and the philosophy adopted by the society. So, the Constitution gives expression to this philosophy, and the institutional arrangements that we studied throughout this book are based on a core and commonly agreed vision. That vision has historically emerged through our struggle for independence, and the Constituent Assembly was the platform on which this vision was stated, refined, and articulated in legal institutional form. Thus, the Constitution becomes the embodiment of this vision, and many people have said that the best summary of this vision or the philosophy of the Constitution is to be found in the preamble to our Constitution. So, have you carefully read the preamble? Apart from the various objectives mentioned in it, the preamble makes a very humble claim. The Constitution is not given by a body of great men. It is prepared and adopted by we the people of India, and thus the people are themselves the makers of their own destinies, and democracy is the instrument that people have used for shaping their present and their future. More than 5 decades since the Constitution was drafted, we have fought over many matters. We have seen that the courts and the governments have disagreed on many interpretations. The center and the states have many differences of opinion, and political parties have fought bitterly. As we will study now in the next NCRT, our politics has been full of problems and shortcomings. So we will cover in the next series of NCRTs. And yet, if you ask the politicians or the common citizen, you will find that everyone continues to share in that famous vision embodied in the Constitution. We want to live together and prosper together on the basis of the principles of equality, liberty, and fraternity. So, this sharing in the vision or the philosophy of the Constitution is a valuable outcome of the working of the Constitution. So, in 1950, the making of this Constitution was a great achievement. Today, keeping alive the philosophical vision of that Constitution may be our important achievement. Yes. So today, keeping alive the philosophical vision of that Constitution may be our important achievement. So friends, here we have completed the class 11th NCRT Indian Constitution at work. Now just have a recap what we have covered from our part 1. Just recap before that. Friends, do not forget to attend Unacademy Civil Services Championship, which is scheduled on 13 June morning 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Enroll yourself free for the Civil Services Championship. The link is provided. We will provide the link in the description box. When you will participate in championship, the top rankers will eligible to get up to 100% scholarship, study material that is notes by top educators and guidance by best CSE mentors like serving and ex-bureaucrats. and top educators. Here is the chance to win amazing prizes like MacBook, iPad, iPhone and AirPods. So hurry up, enroll yourself for Unacademy Civil Services Championship, which is scheduled on 13 June. Yes, we are also providing one-on-one personal mentoring in our course. Here is the limited seat program that is for only 100 seats we have. And this program is valid for the minimum 2 years of iconic subscription. So when you will opt for minimum 2 years of iconic subscription, then you will eligible for the one-on-one personal mentoring. Yes friends, the great learning week we are celebrating from 10th to 16 June, where there are benefits like Maha subscription offer, huge discount on combo subscription, optional carnival, and study material in hard copy. So in Maha subscription offer, you will get extended validity till main examination, and in combo subscription discount, there are huge discount. You can use referral code RBI Live to get referral code discount. Those aspirants facing financial constraint, they can go with the no cost EMI benefit and loan facilities by Unacademy for our subscriptions. We are also providing study material in Hindi and English separate mediums. So 20 books provided to the aspirants, those who will go with the minimum 1 year of subscription. So you can go with 1 year, 2 year or 3 year subscription. So these 20 books worth rupees 10,000 absolutely free with minimum 1 year of subscription. We are going to start optional carnival from 16th June. So now you can boost up your optional preparation with us. We are also providing iconic and plus subscriptions. Here you can use referral code RBI Live to get 10% discount. We are going to start new batches from 16 June. Yes, we are going to start new batch on 16 June. So there are 1 year batches, 2 year batches and NCRT batches along with revision batches. So as per your convenience, you can join these batches. We are also conducting free test series for all aspirants. Where we will cover complete general studies and current affairs part. So you can use code RBI Live to unlock the free test and Unacademy Combat on every Sunday morning 11 a.m. So you can use referral code RBI Live to register yourself for Unacademy Combat. Combat is also free for all aspirants. So friends, in the NCRT Marathon Series for Class 11th NCRT Indian Constitution Act work, throughout the parts, we have covered the complete NCRT page by page. So now, here is the recap what we have covered. So during the parts, some students felt that the speed was slow, but friends, there are a number of students, they was asking for the NCRT coverage page by page. So I hope so. We have covered the complete NCRT. So just go with once again, the Constitution of India. So the preamble, with the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. So, in our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. So, friends, in our marathon series, we have covered the all topics yes. So now we have discussed about constitution and have rights in Indian constitution, election and representation, executive, legislature, judiciary, federalism, local governments, constitution as a living document, and the philosophy of the constitution. And just go through the part 4a, which talked about the fundamental duties mentioned in Constitution of India. So friends, just we'll see what about these fundamental duties. It shall be the duty of every citizen of India to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions, and the national flag and the national anthem, to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom, to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India, to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so, to promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic, and regional or sectional diversities, to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women, to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture, to protect and improve the natural environment including forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures, to develop the scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform, to safeguard public property and to abjure violence, to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity, so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of the endeavor and achievement. Yes, then there is the K clause in fundamental duties, who is a parent or guardian to provide opportunities for education to his child, or as the case may be, ward between the age of 6 and 14 years. So friends, the Article 51A, which containing fundamental duties, was inserted by the Constitution Act 1976, that is the 42nd Amendment, and with effect from 3rd January 1977. And the clause K regarding the right to education, so was inserted. So the duty regarding the education between the age of 6 to 14 years was inserted by the Constitution Act 2002, 86th Amendment, and with effect from 1st April 2010. So this is the part 4A, Article 51A. So part 4A, which talk about the fundamental duties. So along with rights, we have to remember our duties. So just go with the recap what we have covered in today's session. So friends, in first chapter, we discussed about the working of the Indian Constitution. Yes, throughout the book is talked about the working of the Constitution. So in first chapter, we learned about what a constitution means, what a constitution does to the society, how constitution govern the allocation of power in society, and what was the way in which the Constitution of India was made. Yes, then we discussed about why do we need a constitution. Constitution allows coordination and assurance. So we have discussed with the example of a group. Then the certain basic rules of group which was required. So friends, the first function of a constitution is to provide a set of basic rules that allow for minimal coordination among members of a society. Then we discuss about specification of decision making powers. So the second function of a constitution is to specify who has the power to make decisions in a society, and it decides how the government will be constituted. Then limitations on the powers of government. And the third function of a constitution is to set some limit on what a government can impose on its citizens. So these limits are fundamental in the sense that government may never trespass them. Yes, the freedom in all aspects. So constitution is to set some limits on what a government can impose on its citizens, and these limits are fundamental in that sense that government may never trespass them. Then we have discussed about aspirations and goals of a society. The fourth function of a constitution is to enable the government to fulfill the aspirations of a society and create conditions for a just society. Fundamental identity of a people. Then the authority of a constitution we have discussed. So what is a constitution? How effective is a constitution? Is a constitution just? Then mode of promulgation. Then we have also learned about the debate over constitution making in a neighboring country, that is Nepal. Then the substantive provisions of a constitution we have discussed. Balanced institutional design. Then we have discussed about how was the Indian Constitution made. Composition of the Constituent Assembly. The principle of deliberation. Then procedures. Inheritance of the nationalist movement. Then the main points of the objective resolution was discussed in the Constituent Assembly. The India is an independent sovereign republic. India shall be a union of erstwhile British Indian territories, Indian states and other parts outside British India, and Indian states as are willing to be a part of the union. Then territories forming the union shall be autonomous units and exercise all powers and functions of the government and administration except those assigned to or vested in the union. So all powers and authority of sovereign and independent India and its constitution shall flow from the people. All people of India shall be guaranteed and secured social, economic and political justice, equality of status and opportunities, and equality before law. So, and fundamental freedoms of speech, expression, belief, faith, worship, vocation, association, and action subject to law and public morality. Then the minorities, backward and tribal areas, depressed and other backward classes shall be provided adequate safeguards. The territorial integrity of the republic and its sovereign rights on land, sea and air shall be maintained according to justice and law of civilized nations. Then the land would make full and willing contribution to the promotion of world peace and the welfare of mankind. So friends, this main points of the objective resolution was discussed in the Constituent Assembly. Then institutional arrangements. So provisions adopted from constitutions of different countries. British Constitution first past the post. Yes, the provisions adopted from adapted from constitutions of different countries. From British Constitution, we adopted first past the post, parliamentary form of government. Then the idea of the rule of law, institution of the speaker and role, lawmaking procedure. Then from United States Constitution, we adopted Charter of Fundamental Rights, power of judicial review and independence of the judiciary. From Irish Constitution, we adopted directive principles of state policy. Yes, directive principles of state policy, DPSP from French Constitution, principles of liberty, equality and fraternity. Then from Canadian Constitution, we adopted a quasi-federal form of government, that is a federal system with a strong central government and the idea of residual powers. Yes. So these are the provisions adopted from constitutions of different countries. We have studied in part 1. Then with conclusion. After that, we covered the rights in the Indian Constitution, where we have learned the questions like what are the various fundamental rights listed in the Constitution of India, how these rights are protected, what role the judiciary has played in protecting and interpreting these rights, and what is the difference between the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy. We have covered the importance of rights, where we have covered the story from a Chubiri village of Morrigan district of Assam. Then we have discussed the Bill of Rights. Fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution. Then right to equality. Article 16, Clause 4, which described as nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making any provision for the reservation of appointments or post in favor of any backward class of citizens which in the opinion of the state and is not adequately represented in the services under the state. So the Constitution of India, which includes the fundamental rights in part 3, the right to equality, the equality before law, equal protection of laws, prohibition of discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth, that is equal access to shops, hotels, wells, tanks, bathing huts, roads, etc. Equality of opportunity in public employment, abolition of untouchability, abolition of titles. This is under the right to equality. Then right to freedom, where the protection of rights to freedom of speech and expression, right to assemble peacefully, right to form associations or unions, right to move freely throughout the territory of India, right to reside and settle in any part of India, practice any profession. Yes, right to practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade or businesses. Protection in respect of conviction for offences. Right to life and personal liberty. Right to education. Protection against arrest and detention in certain cases. Yes. Then, right against exploitation. prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor, prohibition of employment of children in hazardous jobs, right to freedom of religion, where freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion, freedom of manage religious affairs, freedom to pay taxes for promotion of any particular religion, freedom to attend religious instruction or worship in certain educational institutions, then cultural and educational rights, the protection of language, culture of minorities, and right of minorities to establish educational institutions, and then right to constitutional remedies. So right to move the courts to issue directions, orders, reads for enforcement of rights. So these are the fundamental rights we have discussed. So Article 21 of our Constitution, which describes as protection of life and personal liberty. No person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. We discussed about right to freedom, right to life and personal liberty, preventive detention, then other freedoms, the rights of accused, rights against exploitation, yes, then right to freedom of religion, freedom of faith and worship, equality of religions, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies, the five wreaths, habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, quo warranto, and certiorari. So friends, we have covered also National Human Rights Commission, NHRC. So as we know, the importance of human rights on the global context. In India also we have National Human Rights Commission. Then we have discussed about directive principles of state policy. So the directive principles list mainly three things, like the goals and objectives that we as a society should adopt, certain rights that individuals should enjoy apart from the fundamental rights, and certain policies that the government should adopt. Fundamental duties of citizens, we have discussed. Relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles. Right to property. Then we have covered the election and representation, where we have discussed elections and democracy. Election system in India. We have studied with the example of the Lok Sabha elections of 1984. Then proportional representation. Comparison of FPTP and PR system of elections. Then how proportional representation work in Rajya Sabha elections. Yes, why did India adopt the FPTP system? Then reservation of constituencies. Free and fair elections. Universal franchise and right to contest. We have also learned that is Independent Election Commission. Independent Election Commission. So Article 324 Clause 1, the superintendent's direction and control of the preparation of the electoral rolls for and the conduct of all elections to Parliament and to the legislature of every state, and of elections to the offices of President, and Vice President, which held under this Constitution shall be vested in a commission, so referred to in this Constitution as the Election Commission. Then we have also studied the functions of Election Commission, composition of Election Commission. Then electoral reforms. After that, we have covered the executive chapter. Where we have discussed a distinction between the parliamentary and the presidential executive. The constitutional position of the President of India composition and functioning of Council of Ministers, and the importance of the Prime Minister and the importance and functioning of the administrative machinery. So different types of executives we have covered. So the types of executive, the system based on the principle of collective leadership and systems based on individual leadership. So system based on the principles of collective leadership. Yes, under the types of executive, the parliamentary and semi-presidential system. In parliamentary system, head of the government is usually known as Prime Minister. He is the leader of the majority party in legislature. He is accountable to the legislature. So the head of the state may be monarch, where constitutional monarchy, and the head of the state may be president, where parliamentary republic. So these are the monarch or president, these are the ceremonial executive in parliamentary system of executive. In semi-presidential system, which has the president as the head of the state, has a prime minister as head of the government, and PM and his council are responsible to the legislature. Then in systems based on individual leadership, that is presidential system, president is the head of the state. He is also the head of the government. So the president is usually directly elected by the people, and he is not accountable to the legislature. So these are the types of executive we have covered. Also, we have discussed semi-presidential executive in Sri Lanka. We have also discussed about parliamentary executive in India. Power and position of president. So Article 74 Clause 1. There shall be Council of Ministers with the Prime Minister at the head to aid and advise the President, who shall in the exercise of his functions act in accordance with such advice. So provided that the President may require the Council of Ministers to reconsider such advice, and the President shall act in accordance with the advice tendered after such reconsideration. Then we have discussed discretionary powers of the President. President's role in choosing the Prime Minister, the Vice President of India, Prime Minister and Council of Ministers, size of the Council of Ministers, then permanent executive we have discussed, bureaucracy, classification of civil services, all India services, central services and state services. Then we have covered the legislature, the importance of the legislature, Functions and powers of the Parliament of India. The lawmaking procedure. How the Parliament controls the executive and how the Parliament regulates itself. We have discussed how do we need two houses of Parliament. Then also we have discussed the state having a bicameral legislation like Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Telangana and Uttar Pradesh. Then we have studied the bicameralism in Germany. Then we have covered the Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, then legislative functions, financial function, representation, debating function, constituent function, electoral function, judicial functions. Then we have discussed in detail powers of Rajya Sabha compared with the powers of Lok Sabha. Then special powers of Rajya Sabha we have discussed. Then powers exercised only by the Lok Sabha. Then we have discussed how does the Parliament make laws. Types of bills: government bill, private members bills, non-money bill, money bill, ordinary bill and constitution amendment bill. So friends, article 109 we have discussed, which is special procedure in respect of money bills. So money bills shall not be introduced in the Council of States, that is in Rajya Sabha. So money bills shall not be introduced in the Council of States. Then we have discussed how does the Parliament control the executive. Instruments of parliamentary control. Deliberation and discussion. Approval and ratification of laws. Financial control. No confidence motion. Then committees of Parliament and their role. And we have also discussed how does the Parliament regulate itself. Then we have covered the judiciary, the meaning of independence of judiciary, role of Indian judiciary in protecting our rights. The role of the Indian judiciary in interpreting the constitution, the relationship between the judiciary and the Parliament of India. Yes, why do we need an independent judiciary? We have discussed in detail independence of judiciary, appointment of judges, the process for removal of judges, then structure of judiciary. So we have Supreme Court of India at the top or the apex. Yes, so its decisions are binding on all courts. Supreme Court of India can transfer judges of high courts, can move cases from any court to itself, can transfer cases from one high court to another. Then high court can hear appeals from lower courts, can issue writs for restoring fundamental rights, can deal with cases within the jurisdiction of the state, exercise superintendence and control of courts below it. Then district court, which deals with the cases arising in the district, considers appeals on decisions given by lower courts. Yes, the district court decides cases involving serious criminal offences. And after that, at the bottom level, subordinate courts which consider cases of civil and criminal nature. Then we have discussed jurisdiction of Supreme Court of India, original jurisdiction, writ jurisdiction, appellate jurisdiction, advisory jurisdiction, and special powers of the Supreme Court of India. Yes, advisory jurisdiction. So Article 137, where the Supreme Court shall have power to review any judgment which pronounced or order made by it. Article 144, all authorities civil and judicial in the territory of India shall act in aid of the Supreme Court. Yes. Yes, Article 144. All authorities, civil and judicial, in the territory of India shall act in aid of the Supreme Court. Then we have also discussed judicial activism, public interest litigation, PIL. Then judiciary and rights. Judiciary and parliament. Then legal services day. Then we have discussed about federalism. So in federalism, we have discussed what is federalism, federal provisions in the Indian Constitution, issues involved in the relations between central and the states, and special provisions for certain states having distinct composition and historical features. We have studied the map of India in 1947, then current political map. We have covered what is federalism. Then we have studied example like federalism in West Indies. Yes. So friends, do not forget to attend Unacademy Civil Services Championship on 13 June, morning 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Yes, here is the chance to win scholarships and amazing prizes. Absolutely free for all aspirants. Yes, so we have covered also federalism in the Indian Constitution. So Article 1, Subclause 1, which talked about India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. And Clause 2, the states and the territories thereof shall be specified in the first schedule. We have discussed division of powers, Constitution of India, the union list, state list, concurrent list and residuary powers. So federalism with a strong central government. Then we have also studied about Article 257 Clause 1, the executive power of every state shall be so exercised as not to impair or prejudice the exercise of the executive power of the union, and the executive power of the union shall extend to the giving of such directions to a state as may appear to the government of India to be necessary for that purpose. Yes, friends. So we have studied about conflicts in India's federal system, center-state relations, demands for autonomy, role of governors and president's rule, demands for new states we have discussed, then interstate conflicts, spatial provisions. We have discussed the Jammu and Kashmir territory in federalism. Then we have discussed about local governments. So we have covered the importance of local governments and local government bodies, the provision made by 73rd and 74th amendments, functions and responsibilities of the local government bodies. So growth of local government in India we have discussed in detail. Then local governments in independent India, we have studied about 73rd and 74th amendments in detail. So the 73rd amendment, that is the Panchayati Raj institution, which talk about three-tier structure elections. Yes, three-tier structures, that is the Gram Panchayat at the village level, Panchayat Samiti or Mandal or Taluka Panchayats at the Taluka level, and the Zila Parishad at the district level. Then elections, reservations, transfer of subjects. So Article 243G, which talks about the powers, authority and responsibility of panchayats. The legislature of a state may by law endue the panchayats with such powers and authority with respect to the matters listed in the 11th schedule. Then we have discussed about some subjects listed in the 11th schedule. We have also discussed state election commissioners, state finance commission, then 74th amendment, which dealt with the urban local bodies and nagarpalikas, implementation of 73rd and 74th amendments. Then we have discussed about constitution as a living document. Introduction. Yes, we have discussed at the initial or the starting of today's session as well. Article 368, where the Parliament may in exercise of its constituent power amend by way of addition, variation or repeal any provision of this constitution in accordance with the procedure laid down in this article. So do you remember how the procedure under the Article 368 for the amendment of Constitution? Yes. Article 2, the Parliament may by law admit into the Union, that is new states, and Article 3, Parliament may by law increase the area of any state. We have discussed spatial majority, ratification by states, and amendments per decade we have studied through graph and years taken for every 10 amendments. Then contents of amendments made so far we have discussed in last session. Differing interpretations, amendments through political consensus, controversial amendments. The basic structure and evolution of the Constitution we have discussed in detail. Then Supreme Court verdict on Keshwananda Bharati case we have discussed. The case of review of the Constitution. Constitution as a living document with various observations. Then contribution of the judiciary. Maturity of the political leadership. Then today we have discussed about the philosophy of the Constitution. So we have discussed about what it is important to study the philosophy of the Constitution, What are the core features of the Indian Constitution? What are the criticism of this Constitution? And what are the limitations of the Constitution? Then, what is meant by philosophy of the Constitution? Conceptual structure of the Constitution and the coherent vision of society and polity conditional upon interpretation of the key concept of the Constitution. The Constitution as means democratic transformation we have discussed. Why do we need to go back to the Constituent Assembly? What is the political philosophy of our Constitution we have discussed in today's session? Then the features of Constitution like individual freedom, social justice. Then we have also discussed about respect for diversity and minority rights. Then secularism. Yes, we have discussed the rights of religious groups. States' power of intervention. Universal franchise. Federalism. National identity. Procedural achievements. Then criticism. And then limitations of the Constitution. And then we have concluded. So friends, here we have finished class 11th NCERT in our marathon series. Now, in the next marathon series, we'll see new NCERT. Yes, friends, do not forget to like, share and subscribe Unacademy videos. Do not forget to participate in Unacademy Civil Services Championship on 13 June. So friends, see you in the next lecture with new topic in the new NCERT with NCERT session and in our Inspire Crash Course for Prelims 2021. We continue with the Niti Aayog. So friends, do not forget to attend the YouTube lectures on our Unacademy channels. So like, share and subscribe Unacademy videos. Keep studying. Keep revising. Also registered for free test series by Unacademy. You have to use referral code RBLI to unlock the test. So it's time to, those aspirants are planning to appear for prelims this year. They should start with the solving multiple choice questions, MCQs, and test series. Unacademy is assisting you in this preparation phase, the free test series. So friends, that's it for today's session. Stay home, stay healthy. Take care. All the best.